us in here this evening. As you all are probably aware, our care center is in lockdown at this time. So we're hosting a meeting while we're there. And as this is available to the public, we ask to have it here. And we also have some business to conduct at the hospital. We do provide the meals to the hospital, and that will be a topic of conversation tonight. So I'd like the board to review the agenda and entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Tom has made that motion. Tara has seconded. In favor?
Aye.
Our first item on the agenda is public comment. We would entertain comments about our closing from the public, how it impacts you directly, your family, the community, anything. It is a concern of ours as well, and we'd like to hear you out.
Don't be shy.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. I have been known to be the mouthpiece anyway, I guess. I'm Brenda Wilson. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I just am here tonight to voice some concerns concerning our community. I've been here a long time. I've worked multiple places in healthcare, and it's really concerning to me that we are not given an opportunity to come up with some kind of a way to save the nursing home. And I'm going to loop the hospital into that. It's fine now, but either one of them without the other is going to be on a slippery slope. I had talked with Tim, attended a meeting this afternoon, and I still would just like to hear what the board has, and maybe they haven't come up with anything tonight. I understand they've done quite a few things. We all know that there's a problem. Financial staffing is a problem. And I think we have more than we realize in the community that will be willing to step up and help with that staffing, at least in the short term, okay? We could maybe work out something where it would be longer than that. We'll just have to see. The financing part of it, I think they have taken some steps that needed to be taken that I wasn't aware of. And one of the things I had suggested was a block grant, because I understand they need repair on roofs and on the heating system. And I think that's legitimate. This building's getting older and having things go wrong with it. But I guess I'm really interested in seeing what the board and what Tim can come up with. I'm certainly not a business person. If you cut your finger, I can take care of your finger. But anyway, the thing is, I think we need to have an opportunity to be able to work with the board and to work with Tim Scragg and see if we can't come up with some way through the resource that we have in this community to be able to salvage this. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I echo what Brenda says. I'm concerned. My mother was just recently put in there, and it concerns me that she would be so far away from her family and support. If we can even place her. I kind of feel like it's Hunger Games of the nursing home, trying to compete with 36 other families trying to find a place that will accept her.
I agree with what these ladies have said, and as I've only a short-term member of the community, 20 years, but these people that it's affecting everybody, but our residents. You know, these people made the big step to give up their homes to go into a care facility. Now, in their 80s and 90s, we've got some that are 100. And now they're gonna be asked to leave a county and a city that they have never, ever been out of, to go somewhere else and live their last years of life. And I think it's just one of the saddest things there ever is. And there are some of us that are retired nurses, you know, that would probably drag our bodies in there to help if we could help. I would know I would, to help any way we could to keep this facility open. Because I love those residents over there dearly.
Elda, Tim?
I think, Brain Trueblood attended the meeting earlier today. In the comments, what really what I took away from that meeting was, albeit we may be well intentioned here tonight, once that vote was taken, that really sealed the deal.
So
You're losing staffing, you're losing residents, you know, that's the reality now. I think all of us here, as from the public, would have liked this opportunity sooner, to see if we could have done something different from the community aspect of it. But the challenge to reverse this now, it's really tough.
I think I would echo that. We've been running on half occupancy for several years. Correct? I mean,
Many.
so it would have been nice to perhaps have an opportunity for a community meeting several years ago to address perhaps what could have been done with those empty wings, to make some income so that we are not sitting where we are today. You know, there could have been maybe a senior psych wing, or perhaps some other kind of senior service that might have kept us from losing this facility. And it doesn't just impact our families or our loved ones. It affects our staff and their families. It affects our hospital services. There is an impact that trickles down. So that impacts all of our community. Yes, it impacts our seniors. When we have seniors who are 30 miles away and we have such short notice, and of all times to be Christmas time, and we have a week to make, you know, all of a sudden we're telling our loved ones, we're gonna move you Monday, you know, we're gonna move you, you know, that's awful to do to a family. But as I said, it's not just the family. So I wish that, and I know, Tim, you haven't really had this job that long. It goes back, and some of you on this board haven't been on it very long. It goes back before you. You know, it would have been nice, years. I know that doesn't help us now, but I certainly wish that it would have been brought to the public attention. This is a well-meaning community, and we need senior service. And I certainly wish we weren't sitting here today. And I wish that would have been brought to the public so that some remedies and suggestions could have been brought forward to maybe do something with those empty wings that would have kept us from where we sit right now, to help us all.
I would like to address some of that as a former administrator. I know Tom can speak with me in the fact that we've met with the Mennonite community and ideas of rehab centers, outpatient. and VA contracts and so forth, and kept hitting dead ends.
It's hard to do.
Yeah, we could have used some community access. You know, my mom lives here too in the care center, so I'm right there with you, but financially been having trouble for years. And the staffing, from what I understand, has just gotten even worse since I retired, so.
And if we hadn't had meetings years ago, like Lori said, couldn't we have had one 2 years ago with the community, or last year with the community, or even a yearly meeting with the, you know, everybody, the community? So that instead of 2 months before, or a month, you know, this is happening, everybody finds out, that aren't involved in the healthcare, you know, occupation, that doesn't know the struggles that healthcare is having. Make it aware.
I would like to hear from the board. You say that they have discussed, different things that maybe would help us, or at least explain to us. I understand how this all came about, and I truly feel it's awful. But if the board has already considered some things, I think we should be made aware of those things. The board has.
I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question, Pat. Like, that brought about the decision to close?
No, someone, maybe, unless I didn't hear it correctly, someone back here that has been talking said that they thought the board had already looked at some possible solutions or some possible ways to maybe get some income coming in or something. And I have not heard anything. The only thing that I have heard is what I have seen on Facebook, which is not the best news source in the town. But also, we have a daughter that works here at the hospital. If the nursing home goes,
Hey man,
the
I'm in a
hospital's going
meeting,
to
I'll
go.
call you back.
The pharmacy is going to go, because there will be not enough business to keep all of these other entities going. And if the board has already discussed some ways that they think might be helpful, I think we need to hear those. And maybe you haven't been, maybe I misunderstood whoever said that. And maybe I read it in this paper. But I just, by not really having talked with anybody, I just wondered, you know, what brought you to this other than the realization that, yeah, we're out of money and yeah, staffing is a mess. And a lot of that is because of COVID. Well, there isn't anything anybody can do about COVID. It's here and it's gonna be here. But I think if there is some way that as a community, we can all come together with some way to help you guys keep the doors open. And I don't feel like that the families, even the town, was given any kind of prior notice that this was gonna happen till all of a sudden, wham, the doors are locked and you gotta find some place to put your loved one. I had a loved one over there for several years. She came here from Iowa, stayed in the RCF till she couldn't stay there any longer because of a broken hip. The people, the nurses and the staff, everybody was as kind as they could be to her. My father-in-law was there for his last year after my mother-in-law passed away. And that man was well known in the community, but one thing I felt so bad about, and I know it's such a change for people to have to leave their home and come to the nursing home and expect those people to do what they do for that loved one. And you have to try and explain to that person, well, this is how it has to be, but yet 85, 95-year-old people, they don't understand that. And so here we are, we're picking them up and we're moving them someplace else, And I will say honestly, I think the move, my opinion, which doesn't amount to a hill of beans, folks, but, that move is gonna cause a lot of health problems for those people, because they won't be around familiar faces. They will lose sense of direction. It just, all of those things, and they'll wonder, well, how come Johnny hasn't been in to see me today? Tom took donuts to my mother every morning, and when she couldn't get her donuts, let me tell you, she let him know that she didn't get her donuts that day. It's those kind of things that disrupt families, and I know there is no good time of the year for this to happen, but to have such a short notice, this is really the pits, folks.
I really respect your willingness to speak up, and I am not speaking for the board, I'm only speaking for myself. I came on the board, was asked to come on the board, and decided to do it because my father-in-law was on the board years ago. He got cancer in Florida, and we flew him home because he wanted to pass away in the comfort of his family and his friends, and he wanted to come to the care center, and we were able to do that for him. So being on the board was my way of honoring him. My mother's also a resident. She, I believe, got admitted in August, and so I will only speak for myself. We get it. We know the impact. We are not doing this lightly. But as of 12 days ago, we could not fill a December schedule with a registered nurse. That single thing is what brought this emergency to the table. That's not Scotland County Care Center can't fill a roster of nurses. It's that it is a guideline passed down from the state that you have to have a licensed nurse in the facility at all times. And that's for the safety and the care of our residents.
I understand that.
We did not, at that time, could not fill a schedule after December 21st. That, we have financial issues. We were willing to ride that out through tax levy money that we're going to receive at the first of the year. There's other, I'm gonna say the wrong name, but CARES Act type money that we're anticipating. We don't have any idea of the amount. We were going to ride all of this out, but we cannot operate a facility without licensed nurses. So it wasn't a Christmas, this is awful, I know. But Morgan probably can speak, when you call other facilities, they have openings, but they won't take them unless the staff goes too. They're all in the same boat. This was not an easy decision. This is not something that was talked about at meetings. This was the elephant in the room that when we read the balance sheet and the financial statement every month, we knew. This care facility has not made money for years. We were still willing, and really are still willing, to ride it out. But the only reason we can even fill a December schedule of nurses is because, honestly, the generosity of the nurses that are already there, they're saying, I'll take a shift. I don't want to, but I'll take a shift.
Another shift.
And that's the only reason we can fill a December calendar of nurses.
Well, we're also having to pull from agency to fill
We can't hear you.
If we had to,
We are also having to pull from agency staffing, finally getting some response there to cover a few shifts. We have also hired people who have jobs other places that are willing to help us out on a temporary basis to get through the holidays. So it's just by hodgepodge and trying to get a licensed nurse around the clock through different avenues.
but if we have to go to those type of agencies, that goes from a $30 an hour wage to a $75 an hour wage. That just exasperates the financial issue. Sorry.
That's what I was just, not everyone may know what the situation is in agency nurses and what those even are. Some do, but if you wanna share, or I can, whatever.
You're doing pretty good, Jeff.
Basically, you rent a nurse.
It's traveling nurses.
Yeah, and agencies, we have had contracts over a long period of time with a few, and we have had to rely on them for CNAs, for CMTs, for licensed nurses, and excuse me, the cost for that service has just been escalating month after month after month. For a CNA, where we'd have to pay about $35 to $40 an hour for CNA. An LPN we have to get charged about 65 to 70 bucks an hour. RN more than that. And so we cannot afford that. We can't afford it anyway before having to rely on agency staffing. In a 12-month period, I did my best in the statement to put the issues out there. In 1 year, we've spent about $380,000 in agency staffing fees. Cannot do that. And so in efforts to try and get through the short term, to get through that crunch of having 3 nurses that quit at about the same time, then I contracted with 3 or 4 new agencies. We had about 8 or 9 different agencies that we were going through to try and find people to fill those slots. And that was probably a 2.5 to 3 week course. And in that 2.5, 3 weeks, we had nobody from agency filling in. They do not have the supply of nurses to meet the demand of hospitals and nursing homes.
So the 3 nurses that quit, are they becoming agency nurses?
One is a traveling nurse, another one is going, I believe, to a DON position at another facility away from here. And the other one is so burnt out of being the director of nurses and trying to find staffing and trying to run a department without sufficient staff. And that's another thing, in trying to find those licensed nurses for charge nurse, I've also got to find a director of nurses. And I encourage every one of you, when you go home, get on your computer, look at Indeed, and just type in a search for a licensed nurse or a director of nurses, and do a 75-mile radius. And you'll see what's going on. Everybody is trying to hire them. They're leaving left and right. The industry is facing those challenges as well.
The last nurse we tried to hire was a week ago Monday. Tried to hire a DON. This individual wanted $114,000, and she wanted also full health care for her family. The board said we can't afford it. And this is just not here locally in Scotland County. This is a huge problem, statewide and nationwide.
Right.
And this is not gonna end anytime soon. With the new pandemic coming on, we have the flu season coming on, and I tell you, it's a bad situation for the entire care center, nursing home industry, small rural hospitals are in the same boat. We have people here tonight that can testify to that.
Aye, Skipper.
Tim and I know one of the issues I've seen at other nursing homes as well as ours, when you have 37 residents to care for and you staff for that amount, you have that many nurses, because you really can't have too big of a bench, because then you're paying people for when you need them, but you don't need them on this calendar, this shift. Then if they test positive for COVID, they can't work for the next 10 days if they have a short course of illness. If they have a long course of illness, they might not work again for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. and immediately you need a bench. You need a bench player to come in and fill in for that nurse, that aide, whoever. That's where most places like the hospital turn to staffing agencies to get somebody like that, because you can't get somebody at the drop of a hat. And even if we had volunteers from the community that were nurses that immediately came out and signed up, if you test positive for COVID, or if you're a close contact or sick and you can't work a shift, somebody's got to work for you, or we don't meet the state's requirement of having a licensed person in the facility. So then when you call these staffing agencies, and I know you went through several, and they don't have a person to bail you out, you're just stuck without a licensed person, which is illegal for DHSS in the state of Missouri.
And if I can add to that, we're talking about nursing, but Daisy, it takes way more than just nursing, doesn't
Right.
it? There's no bench anywhere.
Yeah. Housekeeping,
Housekeeping,
Dietary.
dietary,
kitchen.
Yeah.
there's no bench anywhere
Laundry.
anymore.
Yeah.
You know, we have Emmett's working extra because he's got holes in his department. Maintenance and housekeeping, laundry. There is no bench anywhere, period.
Let's discuss the 37 residents just a little bit. This was constructed 50 years ago as a 125 bed facility. 125. Then at a later date, an RCF was built on. Okay. Everybody knows what's happened in this county in the last 40 years. There's been a huge population shift. Everybody knows about that. They will not come to this facility. We tried to work out a deal twice, as late as 2 years ago. Didn't happen. They wanted everything their way. The board said, can't happen.
Well, they didn't wanna follow the law either.
Yeah, it wasn't just even their way, it was, we couldn't do it. It's not that we didn't want to, it's legally, we couldn't do it.
That's right.
Can you explain to me why? Why
For
that's
one,
illegal?
who's gonna work on Sundays for them when it's against the religion?
And they wanted volunteers to come in and do nursing care.
They wanted family style meals. Like, instead of having meals prepared, they wanted, they wanted a separate dining room and family style meals. And we just don't have separate space for that.
They did not want an administrator. They did not want to have the state and federal rules.
Right.
They did not want to follow those. Well, that can't happen. Not in a nursing home district.
They really just wanted to rent the building. They wanted to provide they wanted to provide the care, they wanted to cook their own food, they wanted you to dispense meds and be required to do that, but they wanted no oversight.
Right. And in fact, the individual we dealt with, this individual heard that this nursing home was planning on closing. He called here
I knew it.
the next day. So, that's kind of where we are.
Well, I can't speak for anybody else, and I'm gonna cut out here because you gave us 30 minutes, and we're about at our 30 minutes. But I, for one, came here, we all know there's problems, and to address what you were saying, I was given to understand that they were working on some block grants, and there were some other things that they have attempted to do, that they're checking into. I'm looking for possible solutions that we can help with. We all know there's problems. I will be in touch with Tim and some of the others later on, but I would like to hear what we can do for resolution, because if we are done in the water, then we better just clean it all out.
What would it take, Tim? How many nurses at $25 an hour? How many aides at $15 an hour? No agency fees, and everybody stay and not leave. for agency or to get burnout, nobody get burnout, what would it take?
Superman.
What would it take to maintain that?
Yeah, not just for 2 months, but for like a
I
year,
don't
2
know
years,
how.
5 years, because
You can
even if we
maintain
get
that.
through 6 months or a year, we'll be in the same boat a year from now, and the community won't want it to close them any more than now.
Like you're asking a number, like 5 nurses, 3
Yeah, would it take like
aides,
5 RNs?
and 10 more residents? I
Yeah,
mean,
and 10
is that,
more.
is that
Well,
what you're
we
asking?
could ask the community to move people in, like move your
I'd say
people in
15.
now, instead of
I mean, is,
holding
really,
off.
is that your question?
Well, serious, I think people
Okay.
wonder what it would take. Would it take 10 more community members moving in, 5 more full-time nurses to stay for 10 years? You know, not just patching stuff together, because it's not.
But, and I
really-
agree with that, Dr. Davis.
I think you
I
would-
think we should not patch things.
I think
Yeah.
you would have to have and maintain over 50 residents. And you would have to have more, you'd have to have greater reimbursement on the state side. Right now,
That you don't have any control over.
no, right now, we do 12-hour shifts as opposed to 3 8-hour shifts. And the reason for that is that you can manage to cover your shifts with a fewer number of people by doing that. Now, I think that employees prefer the 3 8s. You have a happier employer when they're working an 8-hour shift than you do a 12. But because just having a limited number of nurses, we have 12-hour shifts. And right now, what we would need would be 4 licensed nurses. That's all we have. 4 licensed nurses, 2 full-time, 2 part-time, preferably 2 of those being an RN. And I jotted down here this afternoon that we were pretty good on CNAs and CMTs. And I had one of my nurse aides quit this afternoon to go do something else. So it is that volatile. And you have a labor market that is so much competition for workers to come do other things. And a lot of things are more appealing than working in a nursing home caring for the elderly directly with personal care. But, so we are short a person on, the nurse aid side. Dietary, we would need 2 people in dietary. We need a maintenance person. We need about 1.5 in laundry and housekeeping, and we need another person in our business office to sure up. And when I say filling those spots like that, they need to be filled with stability. People who want to be there, people who are committed to be there, people who can do a good job and be in the long haul, not just helping us to get past this December. Because we're gonna be right back in the same scenario.
What's turnover been like in the last 6 months to a year?
Hasn't been that bad.
Really?
Hasn't been that bad. We had 3 nurses, short period of time, basically all at once, and your laundry's out on the line.
Is part of that because they found out that you're closing the doors?
No.
That's what
No,
caused,
that was,
that's what caused this.
Actually, what happened, what appeared to happen, I've been on the board for,
Turnover, I worked there for 10 years, I know you were there forever. It's been an issue for years. It just gets worse as years go by. You know, I can tell, I don't know how many times, I worked on the floor as an RN, being a CNA, because none of the CNAs showed up.
we all did.
We all, yeah, I worked beside you as the administrator, helping me turn and clean people and get them to the meals. Multiple, it's all the time, it's been years. And like I said earlier, I tried to screenshot every time the nursing home posted job openings for the kitchen, for housekeeping, for everything. You just lose track. It was on 411, it was on Facebook, it's been in the paper. You just lose track, and it's just years and years and years.
That's how we save it.
Yeah.
That's what Brent went, that was, can we save it?
I mean, are we wasting our time sitting here and y'all made a decision and they just need to help move them out? Or can you come up with some plans that we can help you with? That's exactly.
My thing is if you're offering $30 an hour to RNs and you're not getting them, that's crazy good money. I couldn't even imagine when I started, that's a lot more than what my starting pay was as an RN. And $25 an hour for an LPN, that's $10 more an hour than when I got my LPN. And that's amazing money. You know, being a mom of 4, that would have really well supported my family. So you need to look at more of the issue of why is the staff not staying? Why can't we maintain all the staff? Why can't we, what's going on? What's the real bigger picture? That's just my point of view.
Yeah, and a couple
Okay,
things
I'm back
is-
to, I'm gonna say again, you know, that we all know that the problem's here. It's financial, it's staffing in a big way. We maybe even know some of the reasons. We can sit here and kick this dead horse around forever. But if we don't come out with some positive moves to try, and we were, as a community, I don't know about anybody else, but I wasn't given an opportunity. I didn't get a phone call. I live 4 blocks down the road, still licensed in the state of Missouri. And I told Dr. Toller that I would put in an application at the hospital, but he might not hire me for my gray hair. I don't know. But anyway, the point being, what's gonna happen to the building when it's empty? What happens then? Because the first question that comes to my feeble mind is that, do we have a corporation come in and they set up their own? Or to address you, do the Mennonites buy it and then they set up their own nursing home? Is that what we're doing here? Because if that's it, let's call a spade and quit dancing. But if we're really here because we're concerned about a resolution, then help us come up with some things that we can do.
We need you to help us come
I
up with it,
will.
because
I
we
told you that.
have been at a weekly meeting, 4 weeks in a row. When we found out there was a staffing problem with our director of nursing leaving,
I thought
we
you
have,
were-
yeah, and 2 other licensed nurses, yeah, it wasn't just, but when we knew we were looking, when, the money, again, was never, we were fighting our way through, we had figured, I've been on the board for a year. And when Tim came on board, and then right soon after that, our director of nurses left, we hired a new one, things were going very well. In fact, in October, we no longer were going to be with any, staffing services. We no longer were doing that. So everyone, I mean, the board, we were happy. It looked like things were going in the right direction. And the vaccine mandate came on board and people started talking about leaving. So then suddenly, a lot of the licensed nurses were like, well, you know, we work all these extra shifts anyway, we can't, they didn't wanna sacrifice their entire lives for it. And I can understand that with their families. So then some of them started looking for something else because they knew what was going to come. But once the mandate did not go into effect, we had already lost 3 licensed nurses, but our director of nurses was still looking for people to fill those. He was looking through all the agencies, out on Indeed, put a special thing in the paper about how desperate we were. Those are the things we have come across. There is a monthly meeting open to the public for this nursing home every single month. And sometimes we have special meetings. Part of them are open to the public and then we have to go into closed sections.
So
But at the time, 4 weeks ago, and we've been through this staffing before, but when it became an immediate problem was when we could not cover shifts and legally have those residents in the home. And that is a problem. And that's when we reached out.
Okay, I hear that. What I'm asking you now, and I know that you all have done a lot, but what can we do? And you said you needed me. I told you I'll be there. When's this next meeting that you're talking about that you've had for the last 4 weeks?
It's
Every 4th Wednesday.
Okay.
Is it too late
No.
though? Is it too late? It isn't.
I like that.
I mean, I can't say if we had someone come in, enough nurses to contract what he just said we needed tomorrow morning, and they were all there for orientation and ready to work, that said they were gonna be there, and they were gonna show up. But when you even hire agency nurses, they either come to work or they don't. And you know what, if they don't wanna work weekends or nights, they don't. In
And there's
4
no
weeks, he had
repercussion.
one get back
No.
with him before we had the meeting that we really knew have to make a decision on what we're gonna do. When we had that meeting, he had one get back with him. They had one nurse, and she could work one of those shifts, but it had to be day.
And
Like I
plus
said.
had no DON in that time. That the DON was also one of those leaving, it was just by empathy and understanding of this situation that they decided to stay beyond and help us through this issue. And that's another obstacle there, is finding a director, any director of nurses right now, but you want the right one. You want one that has good nursing clinical skills, you have one that is familiar with long-term care regulations to some extent, and you want one has had some experience and has the people skills to manage that department clinically and just from an employee standpoint.
So if we,
So
even
that's
if we
not an
had
easy
the
task.
ultimate of staffing available, is the money still there to run the facility? I mean, if staffing was resolved, is there money there to run the facility?
No,
So,
there's a short-term
For
staffing
short-term,
crunch,
yes.
and then there's a long-term financial issue that's been going on forever.
Is that something Cindy O'Laughlin was gonna try to help with if we had the meeting on the 30th?
Is one of the items she was gonna take down to the governor and try to work with him some more. And in case some of you aren't aware, we met with Cindy O'Laughlin in Edina about 2 months ago, along with other area nursing homes. She has 14 counties, and I think 8 of us are in the same situation. So she's trying to take that to the governor's office to say, we need some help with CMS, we need some help with some of the regulations with Department of Health and Human Services, to say, what are we gonna do? Because like we said, it's the trickle down effect where it affects the residents that we're so concerned about, and our loved ones and our neighbors and our retired school teachers and all those folks, but also then our employees. Those employees pay a babysitter, those babysitters have rent due, they have college tuition. I mean, it's a horrible situation for this to happen. So she, has every intention to do all that she can when she goes down to Jeff City. She can't perform miracles, but I think she feels a little bit of hope that there's so many of us all in the same predicament. They're just a few more months out than what we are. So, that's where Cindy is with helping our efforts right now.
The other thing that concerns me is, I've been in nursing a lot of years, and we don't have a generation that is prepared to take their elderly parents in and provide the care that they need. And even if they wanted to, it's 24 hours a day. That's why you have nursing homes with 12-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts. Been there, done that. So, you're really setting people up for a really hard road to hoe. And I can't think, I can think back to when people would come in and they'd have somebody they'd taken care at home, hadn't been turned adequately, had horrible decubitus, that had to go into surgery and be debrided. I don't want to go back there. That's not what I would want for my family, and that's not what anybody else wants for theirs. And so, the survival of this is about those things. There was a time when you took care of your ill at home. You didn't use a doctor, you didn't use a hospital because it was too far to get to, and they died. And when they died, you laid them out in the living room, and then you buried them in the backyard. We do not have people that are willing or capable, emotionally or any other way, to take care of that. And having worked home health, I've had people that thought end of life care was going to be the greatest thing go on, because my husband could lay in bed and die here at home, until it came down to it. And then it's, can't you get him into the hospital for me? So I think there's a whole lot more here, and I'm not ready to give up. The rest of you maybe are gonna throw in the towel, but I would like at least one more opportunity for the people in the community to step up and see what we can do. And yes, I'll be there.
To find the staffing?
I'm already working on it.
Because the staff that left due to the vax mandates, have they already taken other jobs? Have
Right,
they?
those are the three he talked about.
All the earlier ones you
Right.
talked about?
That
didn't
that
leave
wasn't
because
the
of the
reason
vaccine.
for
No,
the.
they didn't leave
their
for
leaving.
that, but that, it was all working up to that,
Okay, I
what
thought there
was
was,
going on.
there was none that left because of
No,
that
no,
prior
no,
to,
no,
okay.
Because
So
of
what is
that.
the mandate here? Are they mandated to be immunized? I mean,
No, no.
That was to go into effect December 3rd, and the government repealed that.
Just be
They,
sure.
they didn't, it's not dead in the water, but it's on the back burner for the moment.
Okay.
But it was a line in the sand, we were gonna lose 40% of staff.
49%.
It's, well, some of them were looking at doing an emergency,
Exemptions.
thank you, an emergency exemption. But initially, if that wasn't an option, it was 40% of staff.
What is, I'm curious, what's an RN, you said a contract RN is gonna, you're gonna pay her $75 an hour?
No, we don't. We have to pay the agency.
I know the agency, I understand that, but you're still paying her, right?
Right.
So what, does she actually get paid for working?
That's a good question.
Because that's $140,000 a year, 3 days a week at 52 weeks. And I'm sure she's not getting even close to that. The agency's getting a big chunk of that. So, I mean, if we were able to bring up our salaries up somewhere near maybe what they're getting paid as an agency employee, that might be able to, we might be able to keep some staff here, maybe, I don't know.
But you gotta find them, Daryl.
Well, I
You
understand.
gotta compete for them.
Well, but I'm saying some of the ones that are working at an agency might come off that, maybe they're contracted and they can't, but if they're making somewhere near or close to what they're making working for the agency, the agency's taking a big chunk of that, I'm sure.
Well, I'm sure.
And second question, I was at the meeting today too, and I'm curious, I know, finances are a problem, and I don't know much, I don't understand the whole situation as far as, putting, raising taxes on the community or a bond issue. Is that a possibility that's been looked at, and how long would that take to go through if we could raise a bond to increase some income into the care center?
Well, let's talk long-term stability, this facility. When I came on this board, back years ago, we had 80 residents,
Uh-huh.
80. And then they built the CFR. Well, we've never had over about 12, and they got, now have 7.
Mhm.
And,
What's the capacity of the RCF? 20?
pardon me?
20 or 25 in the RCF?
Yes.
Okay. Which one, 20?
28.
28, okay.
Anyway, to make a long story short, the RCF has always lost money. Always. The care facility, the skilled care facility, in fact, at one time, we had a little surplus. We did. Then, of course, this building is 50 years old. We had to spend some money to put in a new heating and cooling system, $400,000.
For half of the
Of
nursing
a heating and cooling system.
Yeah.
And we had to put on some more, so the whole thing was over 6 this time.
It was over what?
600,000.
Your census goes down gradually. Pretty soon, you're losing an average of $46,000 a month. On average. Some months more than that, some months less. Well, it doesn't take long to go through $500,000. So, your surplus disappears. Now, we're down to 37 residents, and we're out of cash. It doesn't matter what kind of assets you have in the building and the ground, $2 million doesn't matter. If you run out of cash, and you cannot pay your health, you cannot pay the gas bill, then you got a problem.
Well, that was my question. What would it take on a bond or something to raise cash to try to help to keep this going, along with if there's other funding that could possibly come in on a, I don't know, block grant or something
Well,
Cindy's
of course,
looking at?
The one thing you could do is raise room rents, but nobody wants that. And
What-
again, this long-term thing, we gotta have more residents. How you gonna do that?
We
So
are,
what-
we, sorry.
Budget, what's your budget? What do you budget for annually? Last year, this year, 12 million, 15 million, 7 million?
It's around, I would say 3, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so 3.2 million for expenses, and your levy that comes in January is how much? How many thousand?
Approximately 250,000.
250,000 on 3 million,
So less than 10%.
less than 10%.
And
So if
we
you
are,
raised it, if you doubled it, if everybody's taxes
you
doubled.
can't raise it.
You
We
get,
are
let's
at
say
the
you could,
limit.
let's say you could, you
Okay.
raise 500,000 on 3 million. You still have to pay out 3 million in taxes, so you gotta make some other money somewhere.
So you can't raise what, yeah,
You can't raise taxes. We are at the limit as, I mean, like, the tax levy, we are at the ceiling. We cannot ask for the taxpayers to pay anymore.
Oh, so that's
It
it.
would have to be a bond issue.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And it would have to go through an election, a
Mhm.
special election. I don't even know if you can get one on in April. That would be the quickest, right?
Is that impossible?
You're talking about stuff I don't know anything about.
Well, one thing about bonds is they're supposed to be paid back also, and if you can't break even on our obligations now, we can't take on another obligation.
Don't they end up like rating those bonds? A company comes in, when you say you wanna do a bond, and they look at your budget, or your bill, your, financial statement, and they say, no one will loan you this money, right? Even if the county will pay for it, cause if you default on it, then that's a bankruptcy, it's the county taxpayer bankruptcy.
Well, again, I think it boils down to long-term sustainability. And, if you continue to lose $40,000-50,000 a month, just not there.
You know, we're saying that where's the beginning? If city has, 8 other districts that are just right behind us. We have this wonderful hospital here. Why aren't we jumping on board to, hey, let's bring all those companies in here, right here, build up our hospital. Let's jump the gun and get all the residents from these 8 other facilities. Why aren't we doing that?
What do you think their communities are gonna say to their boards?
They're having the same meeting, you know.
Yeah, like, I mean,
shortly after
Edina's got a board, a district, so when
They
they
don't have a
close.
hospital.
I know, but when they close it and they move their residents up here, what community members are gonna come to that board meeting and say, Mom has always lived in this county. How is it fair to move her up to Memphis, 30 miles away from me, when she's gonna get confused, her health is gonna go down? The same, and so we got a great facility, I agree. I wish Clark would close, Knox would close, and Schuyler would close, and they would put all their residents here, right next to the hospital.
Right.
That would be great for Scotland
Right.
County Care Center, great for Scotland County Hospital.
And great for the
Clark County would have a fit, Knox County would have a fit, Schuyler County would have a fit.
It is something we've talked about, Jody. It's not something that we haven't thought about and discussed. It'd be a tough sell to the other communities. I mean,
understand that.
without,
Okay, so
without
let's-
knowing how critical
Let's jump
there's.
forward then, our residents, the letter says that you're all helping to place, because as you said, you know, it's like Hunger Games, we're on lists, waiting lists everywhere. You know, where are we gonna place these residents? We move them to wherever they can be accepted, it happens there in 3 more months. We've gotta get, I mean, this is just the beginning. You know, think of longevity, 18 months, 3 years from now. It's gonna keep happening. Where's the committee? Where are the people, you know, Cindy wants to help. This is just the beginning. We've got to scream, and we've got to scream loud, because we can't keep moving these residents. They won't exist anymore. And we're gonna continue to age. We're an aging community anyway. We have this hospital. I think it's really important to try to save it. You know, this is a trickle. It's just starting, and it's gonna continue. And I just feel like Scotland County has this hospital. We've got that pull. We've got that drive that, you know, neighboring counties don't have.
If we had not had this imminent staffing issue, that's what threw us in first. The others must have that, at least they've been able to keep it, at least at the minimum, a
Right.
licensed nurse in the building. I don't know what their staffing's like, they may be understaffed. We have excellent staff at our building, and I wanna say that. They have worked hard, and there's not one of us that haven't sat here and tried to figure out other options. It's
Right.
not like it was just let's have a meeting, let's have a special meeting, let's go ahead and vote on it. No, it was we're not doing this, we're not doing this. This is not what we're doing. Deanna's only been on the board for a few months, I wanna say that. But I know 3 people that are sitting here, and we definitely talked about it all, that no, this isn't what we're gonna do. Nope, we're gonna find the staff, we keep finding the staff, we'll continue to find the staff, and there was no staff. And we're looking at it
We're in a
as,
really bad position with the lingering pandemic. I don't want this exact meeting going on 6 months from now and we lose our hospital. You know, I don't know, people have to come together. We've got to come up with.
I agree.
well, that's
But-
why it was imminent.
But until Medicaid and Medicare reimbursement rates catch up with inflation, intellectually, doesn't matter what my heart says,
No, exactly.
but intellectually,
But we have to
I
make
don't
this the
see how that
beginning,
can
not
happen.
the end.
Yeah.
I think we all need to work together, and this is the beginning, not the end.
you are
Even if
saying
it's the end
exactly
right
what
now,
I said.
You know, we have
Yeah.
to place these for, you know, state licensing and everything. This can't be the end, because then we just let the next thing end, and the next thing,
Yeah.
and we just can't.
Well, and I said in our last meeting that I feel like we're the sacrificial lamb because we're the first.
Absolutely.
And how we got here is a combination of issues that was a perfect storm for everything. But I have said exactly what you've said. I've just had longer to process it. Doesn't mean I don't feel it. But I don't know what the answer is, if there is an answer.
And then can you speak, you know, for the families here, the residents, how are you working with the other facilities? We're on waiting lists. What happens if we can't get in anywhere? Are you working with the other facilities?
I don't want to put you on the spot, Morgan, but do you want to? I'll speak for myself if you don't.
So I will address that. Yes, on our agenda a little bit further anyway. So, the first step was looking at every resident, what level of care do they need? Then looking at, and Morgan has been crazy busy, and contacting all facilities around us. Do you have any beds? Are you taking admissions? Do you have a quarantine? Do you require testing? Getting a scope and a feel for the availability for all different levels of care. Then talking with family members. Send the letters out when we could send those letters out. And then getting feedback from patients and families, where would you like us to check first? Okay. And so we have gone through that gauntlet of having found at least a direction and a place for every resident as we speak. Now, those receiving facilities have to go through a process of looking at their records, looking at their staffing, maybe even coming to the facility to assess the residents before they decide, will we accept them? So that's where we are. It's all out on every resident has a spot, at least a starting point. And of those, we have 2 residents who have actually already discharged. We have accepted, the RCF folks have all been accepted to the Clark County RCF. And that transition is set for next week. We have, of the remaining residents, we have 10 who have been accepted. And we have 28 that's kind of in that pending mode for them to review records, looking at staffing, and that's where a big issue comes into play, because these other facilities, some of them, 1 or 2 in particular, it is contingent because they do not have the staffing to take on new residents. So they have to have some of our staff to be able to handle any more than they already have.
And you said that was 28?
Yes, 28 were pending. So the game plan, of course, this is Christmas week, and on Monday or Tuesday, to find out from those other 28 that are still out there, what's your answer? And part of that is be working with our staff, because we're also trying to help our employees through this. We have workforce development solutions coming in to provide resources and guidance for our employees on what will they do next. We also had facilities to come and talk about job opportunities and things for our employees. So it's not just families and residents, it's also the employees that we are trying to work through this with. So we kind of have to regroup and see where we are with those other 28.
Question, if we were to be able to get staff, whatever you line out that you need, you were able to get staff, even in the short interim, what kind of residents would you take into RCF or into long-term care, or are you just not taking it? You can't tell me, I'm sorry, you can't tell me that you need more beds filled for more money, and then have no idea what you're looking for.
I don't guess I understand your question.
Well,
I think she's saying it's a done deal, isn't it? I mean, all of our thoughts and all of our efforts are pretty moot.
I wanna know what kind of people they would admit. You're moving them out and calling these different agencies or different centers to see if they'll take them. But if we could come up with staff, what kind of people would you accept to fill your beds now? Are you just saying we don't have staff and we're not gonna do it?
Well, you'd have to be on a different plan than a closure plan.
I agree.
That's the first part.
Thank you. That's what we need to do.
And so, your admission criteria is no different. Your RCF, they have to make a pathway to safety.
Right.
You have to be able to take care of the patients that you have, that you're admitting.
Right.
But you cannot admit new people when you're in a mode of a closing.
Okay, so how do you get out of the mode of closing?
Find solutions to the problems that lead us there.
And so the biggest one right now I'm hearing is staffing, is that correct?
There's no biggest. The staffing was the most urgent.
Okay.
The other issues were just as big. It just wasn't as imminent.
Okay, so you have an imminent issue with staffing. That's resolved. Then where you go?
And we have an imminent issue with financing.
Okay,
because,
so if you're looking at some assistance with financing, then where do you go?
the census, so that you
Okay.
can generate.
Okay, and that's what I'm asking you. That's a plan, okay? We know what we can work on, when we can work on it, and how to get there. And we'll help you. You've done a lot. I'm not saying you haven't. But you may have resources here that you never thought about. And I just don't want, like I said, if it's a done deal, call it a done deal. But call it what it is. And then what are you gonna do with the building? We're gonna have an empty building sitting here. What, needs to be torn down next to a hospital? I just don't wanna see that, and I don't think anybody sitting here does either. And so I like the plan. We know kinda what it is, staffing. Okay, and if I come to you in a week and say, I've got all the nurses you need, what are you gonna do?
Probably fall over dead.
Huh?
I said I would probably fall over dead.
Thanks.
Well, and the people of the RCF, the guidelines for their relocation is 30 days. That started December 13th. So the timeline, all that is very, very short.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Say again?
They're all moving Monday, Tuesday,
Yeah.
Wednesday. Oh, this next one? Yeah.
Well, he said there's 28 still pending.
No,
Those
I'm
are the
not-
care
No, I'm
facilities.
talking about the RCF. Oh, my God.
So I have one question, and but before the board took the vote for closure, did you discuss amongst yourselves to bring it to this public before you took that vote? Did you see any value?
We
that
did,
would have
we
been
did
gained by
discuss the
bringing it to
need,
public?
we
Because
did
to me,
discuss the
from
need.
What I've seen, there's been the opportunity and would have been benefit, even just seeing from 12 o'clock till now today. But, just curious, because I think most people that's sitting out here are concerned about that part of it, and
Randy?
I've changed the thing.
Randy,
Other-
we
other
did
than-
discuss the need to talk to the public.
I think we skipped that one.
And we were in the jam on the staffing and the regulations. And the reason there's a reason that there's a lag between voting to have a closure and then going immediately public with notification. That's because there's state procedures that have to be followed. Another slap on us if we don't follow the protocol of the notifications.
Today it was because you didn't wanna start a panic, but what do you think there is going on now? You didn't tell the public before last week because you didn't wanna cause a panic, but what is going on now? It's a revolution.
The panic I was alluding to is that we don't live in a necessarily wealthy community. I mean, Northeast Missouri is, yes, we all pool together, and yes, it's an environment like I've never seen. But if you tell somebody that's making $13 an hour that they're potentially going to lose their job, you're going to lose them to another job before you even have a chance to talk about anything. So I very much understand, Candy, what you and Randy are saying, but we weigh the odds of what do you do? And we're just people. I mean, that's all we are. We're just people that have a desire and a compassion to serve, that we get nothing out of it other than, this is what we feel led to do.
And I wanna thank all our board, our Scotland County Hospital Board, our Care Center Board. Thank you guys. I've been on boards before. It is a thankless job. And, this is very, very sad. It is very sad. And for me to read it on Facebook the other night, it just, sorry, emotional time of my life. It was very sad. And thank you guys for trying. And I don't think any of us wanna give up yet, but it sounds like our residents are moving on. And, again, thank you. And let us know, what can we do? I mean, we're gonna have to make our voice known in Washington DC and Jefferson City. I mean, I work for NEMO RPC, and that's what you have to do. We have to, like Jody said, you gotta be the squeaky wheel and to get some funding. I mean, they bail out airlines. They give CARES money out like crazy, So let's take care of our elderly is what I wanna tell our legislative people. They've given years and years of their lives to us and to our communities. And it just makes me so upset that we cannot keep our residents. And I don't have any family here right now, but I have a lot of friends, and I'm just very sad about it. And like I said, they bail out everybody else, and it's like, I'm just praying for a miracle that Senator Laughlin and some of them can make our voices heard, but we have to do that also. And keep trying. I don't know. It's a very hard place to be, but thank you all for what you do every day, and it's not an easy job, and it wasn't easy, I'm sure, for you to take that vote. But, like everyone here, I don't wanna give up, but I don't know what to do.
When I was in the public health department arena, I attended a meeting down in Jefferson City, and I was referred to by some of those out of Kansas City and St. Louis as an outlier. Because we're up here in no man's land. And obviously, I don't speak very much, but I assured them that I was not an outlier. I was a Missourian, and that my health care and my life was as important to me as whoever was sitting down there in Kansas City or St. Louis. And somebody told me later, they said, you know, because of where we are, we have to kick harder, shout louder, and be more determined. And I guess that's what I'm asking, even of the board. If you would back up and let us see what we can do. I mean, you're already moving them out. I can't turn that around for you, but let's see what can happen so that we don't shut the doors permanently.
I have a question. Tim, for you specifically, Tim Shag, can you just talk about the year after closure and how that works, the licensing, and if it's possible for the nursing home to reopen within that year and be under the same guidelines that it's under now, the new rules that have been kind of established by the legislature about that?
So there are specific codes that were in play when the nursing home here was built, and those are the regulations that you are held accountable to. And so when the facility closed, and there was a little bit of question or confusion about that because of a 1 year or a 2 year time frame. The statute says you've got 12 months after you close that you have an opportunity to apply to reopen, and then you would fall under the same codes as when you were originally built. You have to go through a whole brand new recertification process. Well, when the mandatory vaccine was looking at us square in the eyes, there was a lot of resistance because it was going to cause facilities to have to close because they're looking at 20, 30, 40% of their staff that would not be vaccinated. Right. And you could not stay open. And so that was a direct response to that problem, is because of that vaccine mandate, they would then change that to 2 years instead of 1 year to allow facilities to reopen. And for many of us, that was just a slap in the face, you know, how difficult it is, period. So your only empathetic response was, we'll give you an extra year to reopen. They really didn't care about the impact at the local level or residents or anybody else. But we would give you an extra year to reopen, pat you on the back and go on your way. Okay. And does that answer your question?
Is that an option for, you know, is this, what's the next step for this board? Will this board dissolve? Will this board stay intact for that period of time in case there's there's a chance that there might be a reopening possible within that year? Like, what's the plan for this board of directors?
And attempting to speak for the rest of the board who's here, they and I are in the same spot that you are. We have yet to foresee what kind of options there are. Those have to be explored. There's been no conspiracy theory, there's been no discussion. I learned this afternoon that I've been attending your hospital board meetings.
Well, you always have carried a soft stick.
You know, and that just, if I'm gonna say something, I'm an outsider. I attended the meeting this afternoon, and I listened and I watched body language and people's reaction, and I could see resentment, animosity, some suspicion. And here again, I don't know the history, but I'm going to speak my mind. And I think a lot of this, there were conversations or comments about a predetermined plan to bring in corporate, to bring in Blessing, to tie in the hospital. And I'm telling you that you guys have a problem that you need to get over before you can ever work together to find a solution for the nursing home and the hospital. And it pissed me off when I came back to work and I hear rumors that I've been attending board meetings and all this hoopla was going on, that there's an undermining current. This board is trying to address issues that are facing the nursing home, period, head on. And the hospital is holding the meeting here because there's a food service issue. We need to try to figure out something to resolve that.
Our minutes are available. Our minutes are generally available on request. You can come and look at them. Mr. Schrag has never attended a board meeting.
We don't know what our options are. We are trying to explore those. We have our ears open, our eyes open, phone calls being made to see what options are out there. I have an idea that this merger thing, I've been talking for some time. That's the reason I had the meeting in November, was I wanted those smaller facilities to come and in an open forum where they weren't intimidated by a camera to talk about the issues that they were having, because I came from one of them. I can see the issues. They're all around having the same kinds of problems. And so at that meeting, I wasn't going to say the consolidated word, never did, but another home did. Which one do you think it was? It was one like us. One that had about 120 bed capacity. One who could take in the smaller facilities to be a regional. You know, and there were homes, the smaller homes there that are 50, 60 bed licensed, and they're like, no way. No way, we're not ready for that, that's not the answer. Well, I think it's one solution. And I think, but those other homes have to be at that spot to see that and to work towards that. That takes time. In our community, the elementary schools were the same way. Their buildings were old, they didn't have enough teachers, their student number was down. And the only thing that made sense was to consolidate and have a centralized elementary. That was a bitter fight for a long time. Hurdland, Novelty, Knox City, they didn't want to give up their small schools. And I understand that. And I understand the anger, the sadness in this community. But you guys have got to get past some of that other suspiciousness and work together to find a solution. That's all I've got to say.
But you gotta understand, the animosity and stuff that you've seen, like at these meetings and stuff, there's stages of grief. This is a loss to this community, and right now we're pissed.
I'm not talking about here and now. I'm talking about just, there's been a current here that's been going on for some time, and I don't know, I can just see it. I can see it at the meeting this afternoon. You know?
That's one of the reasons why I actually came this afternoon, is because Tim and I speak almost daily, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. And I think Tim's a pretty transparent person. This problem, and I've heard a lot of community saying, this is Tim, this is Tim, this is Tim. This is not Tim. This has been escalating since before Tim. He hasn't been here long enough to make a giant impact. And that's why I came, because earlier today, because, you know, I felt like, hey, maybe being a longtime resident here, taking care of a lot of people's family members, just saying, hey, Tim's not the problem. Tim's not doing all of these things behind people's backs.
We worked with Mr. Schrag when he was at the Edina Nursing Home. I've worked with him when he first came on board here. We've talked about our mutual problems that are parallel. And he's called me several times. We've had several conversations since this announcement the other day. In emails before that, we had conversations regarding staffing. We were unable to provide our already short staff to throw out a lifeline.
Mr. Schrag is an exemplary administrator. I wish I could live up to his standards. I don't. It's not Mr. Schrag's fault. This is not a time for finger pointing, either at Mr. Schrag or this board. That's all I'll say.
Tim has provided more clarity to our financials than in the 5 years that I've been on the board. I've learned more about finances probably than in 17 years at the bank. Now, I hate to say that because you're probably not gonna come see me at the bank now. But, he really opened our eyes about our finances and the use of our cash, our budgets, our staffing issues, and how that's impacting us. And yeah, this has been a downward trend for a long time, and we didn't pay enough attention to it.
Let's go back to the long term sustainability. And the schools did it. They consolidated, reorganized, and I really think this meeting we had back in November at Edina with the center. There were what, 6 nursing homes there with administrators and directors, and they all got up, told their story. The stories are real simple. Staffing issues, financial issues. In fact, one of them said, the administrator said, we lost $1 million last year. So how long can you stay in business at that rate? And I think maybe ultimately, this thing that Dr. Davis talked about, we do in fact have a hospital facility here, right next to the nursing home. So down the road, some of these other nursing homes may not make it. We may have to consolidate them. We have a nursing home facility anywhere close to us. And the other advantage to that would be it's directly next to the hospital. And that may be the only way that we can have enough residents, provided that you can get the nursing care there to sustain an operation. The way it is now, here, it's not sustainable. Not long term.
The facility that lost $1 million has 80 residents. That's what she said. And at the time we had 40. And I thought immediately, well, we're right on par because we only lost $500,000. So if you extrapolate that to all the centers, and I all think they're managed as well as ours, probably not any better, but as well, I'd say it is a very common problem.
Did Cindy today think that there was some county money too? Dwayne Ebling was there, the county commissioner. Did she believe that there was some county money that we could get? Cause she was wanting to meet on the 30th at noon and get some of the minds, the greater minds of the community together to see if we could save this, because she loves Memphis, and she says if Memphis closes, it's just there'll be another one close and another one close and another one close, and she's very concerned about keeping this going. So do you guys still wanna have this meeting or what?
I don't think I have the right verbiage. I thought she was talking about CARES Act money, and there was a phase 3 and a phase 4 like the county was gonna get, and they disperse out funds. Like I know that The health department got some, we got some, the hospital got some. I mean, I know that a lot, but I don't know what's in the works. And what I took from her from that is that she hadn't talked to our presiding commissioner yet. And so she did not know what was available and when she would know.
Well, then that's what the meeting for the
Yep.
30th would be, to have all that information at that meeting.
Correct.
So are we still gonna have a meeting the 30th?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Is it at the Boyer Center at noon?
I believe so, yes. Is that right?
That's what I understood too.
Can we get something out on Facebook about it, or the newspaper or something? And then you guys can figure out through her, you know, who you want to invite, but we need the greater minds of the community to get together.
And I kind of think her intention there, Candy, was to get that on the calendar so nobody else booked that date, either in her staff or in our community.
Yes.
And she was wanting to go back to Jeff City.
Yes.
To talk to the governor and then to the department to find out overall what are they gonna do with our rural communities, since there's 6 out of the 8 right now in her 14 counties that are in the same situation. So I think we're kind of in a holding pattern, and that's why that date was targeted, was just so it would be available.
Okay.
So I think we're waiting for more direction to see if she's made any headway that way.
Okay.
And I'm not saying we need to wait for somebody else for us to make our,
So are you
to
guys gonna
continue
reach
to
out to
work, but I feel like we've had a lot to digest since noon today after meeting with Cindy again.
Are you gonna reach out to her then about the meeting? Okay.
That's our intention.
All right.
I have reached out to the city over a month ago about the money that they received, to see if any of that would be available possibly to the nursing home. And they have not, they only had one that was an emergency, but like as in tomorrow they needed the money. We weren't there, but one of the board members knew, and I spoke with her at length about it, that she would let me know as soon as they started putting it together, and it would be after the first of the year. But we could have qualified for some of the city money also, because there's a lot of things we've looked into, each of us, and then as a group, financially, as in a block grant, as in maybe using like a haul or two of the RCF for something else. And all of those things are discussed, and we start to look into them, but again, the imminent problem was that we didn't have the staffing. So those kind of, when we had our regular meetings, we've discussed them, but our other meetings that we had weekly was to see where we were and if we could cover it and what was gonna happen. And Tim can tell you, he called the state to get help. He put it out there, in his statement about all of the different things that he and the DON, all the places that they called. And actually, it's not in there, but the number of people that our board was texting throughout our meetings, trying to find nurses that might be interested. Somebody's aunt that was retired from nursing, or her friend was retired, or her, we were grasping at straws. Students that actually had a job to go to, but had a little time off before they started their new job, and actually took a few shifts. And that was even before we decided that we voted for the closure. But I'm just saying, I could go on and on and on about the things we're looking into, trying to do. If I go back in the minutes, I could list them, but the veterans, but the VA, that you have to wait till they open up for bids. You can't just go apply because it's open, and you just, if they approve us, we're a VA, So I'm just saying, we've looked into so many different things.
If staffing wasn't an issue, I'm guesstimating, but I think we've decided 4 or 5 months financially is all that we're viable without a windfall of money. That's tops.
So really, what you're trying to tell all of us out sitting out here that don't understand, I understand that, I'm sure you have put in hours and hours of calls and looked into this and looked into something else to try and keep the nursing home open. But now you have said you have so many days to get those residents out into someplace else, and then the door will be locked.
We had 30.
Is that my understanding?
We had 30 days from the 13th for the RCF if we continue with a closure plan. We had
So-
60 days from the 13th for the residents of the care center itself.
Okay, so what if there is still left at, let's say at day 40, there's still 2 or 3 people still sitting over here because they have not met somebody's qualifications and stuff. So really, until those 60 days are up, the doors are still open over here at this facility.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, so that's what I was wanting to know. How long is this building gonna be open? And we have to get all these people out of here by tomorrow. And then they're locked out. So that's what I wanted to know, because this other stuff, it's all gonna take time.
Right.
And it takes lots of time.
And if staffing wasn't an issue, Pat, if we could get something on a bond initiative for the April election, if we could go through community action, cause we looked at them to get help for our roof and the other half of our heating and cooling. If we could get, I don't know what, the CARES Act money to help with operating costs.
There's so much though that's down there, and you told this gentleman that you have, like if we had a year, and so you could go and unlock the doors, let's say on month 9, and then everything would go back to the same rules as that we had 50 years ago when they built the thing. Is that correct? Okay, so as a group of people and as a community, then we all still need to be able, let's just not write us off yet, but we all still are gonna have to do what we can as a community. So probably all that I've gotten out of this whole thing tonight is that we're in a hole, and about the only way to get out is to get in contact with your congressman and your people in Washington DC, and tell those people they need to come to Northeast Missouri to visit the poor farmers. And we did that. We did that in 1980. And those people came and saw how people in Scotland County live and how we work together in order to get things done. So I think really what we need to leave here with is not a doom and gloom situation, unless that's exactly what it is. But that's what I want to know. Is this doom and gloom, or is there a chance that maybe in 9 months we could open those doors again? Whether we have 25 people to put in there, or if we have 155 people to put in there. But the thing is that we're gonna have to keep that building up, so that when somebody comes in and says, well, I think, you've got some money coming in here somehow, we have all worked together to get something so we can open the doors. Then we're still gonna have to make sure when we open the doors that it's appropriate. So tell me if it's doom or gloom and I'll go home, or if there's still
I'll only speak for myself. There's always hope. I mean, like, even if the closure happens, even though this is a rough go, we've had a lot more time to process this, and we haven't had a lot, but we've had a lot more than you have. But it is encouraging to me to see the community support that even if a closure is possible, to rally around to possibly have the reopen in a year. Now that would be massive, because it would be our employees are employed somewhere else and our residents are somewhere else.
Yeah, I think people need to know that there still is hope out there, because a lot of people think, oh, they're kicking Aunt Betty out because they locking the doors because they can't have any staff. They don't have enough people to take care of Aunt Betty. But then that's it. That's what a lot of people are thinking. So I think that, the community needs to know that, yes, this is a horrible thing and it's happening, but we still have to be a community and try and work with you guys to try and get some help later on that, you know, we're not dead yet, we're sinking, but we're not dead.
I think a lot of the staff, the reason some of those slots were filled, not all of them, but part of them, was a lot of people that were leaving. Our DON is staying for a while to help us cover some of those shifts. I mean, yeah, not just her, but I mean, I think other people are, and I think people are stepping up that were there that were already full-time.
Well, but I think if we're gonna still put it out there and say that there is a little light way down there at the end of the tunnel.
I have hope and I have faith.
You know, but I think people need to know that, and we still need to be able, hopefully, try and reach some of these the staff people to come in and look at our facility and see the operation that we have with the hospital, so that they can see, well, maybe this is a good place for me. Maybe, you know, we have a good school, but if we start losing our people from the nursing home, the staff there and the families that are there, and if they have to move out, then the next thing's gonna be the hospital, then the school's gonna be gone. So if it ends today, I think as a community, we need to know that we're looking for everything else to come down the tubes. So, and I know that's a horrible thing to put on anybody to say, but if you all think there is a glimmer of hope down there, then I think we need to tell the people, and hopefully we can explain to the people that aren't here that, you know, don't give us up yet. Don't scratch this county out of northeast Missouri. Just, you know, I don't wanna stand up like it. You know, or West Grove, Iowa. You know, there's nobody there anymore. And they've all had to, you know, put their mail all into Bloomfield, into Davis County Bloomfield mail office. Well, our post office, if we all up and move out, there's not gonna be any post office here. There's not gonna be any grocery stores because everybody has had to leave. And what we have here now is not a very big group of people, but we need to all try to, if there's a little light down there, I think we all need to know it. Other than, okay, well, you had your meeting tonight and they said we're closed and there's nothing else that we can do, then I think we need to know that.
Mr. Schrag, to emphasize, I think, some long-term realities that both of us are facing, can you just talk a little bit as the expert in the elder care industry in the room here, probably, unless one of the board members is more of an expert, but imagine you are. My understanding of that industry is that the successful facilities have a fairly robust, for lack of a better term, cash paying patient, resident, apartment situation, because government insurance does not pay the bills. You have to have margin producing patients. And my take on my 15 years here in the town has been that the RCF, which I think are cash paying patients, and you may have a couple others, that census has declined. So while the community states and does need the capacity for the government insured clients,
Yes, they do.
the community has
we need-
demonstrated by the lack of census and willingness to pay however you want to define community. And the demographics of our community, in my estimation, don't promise that that's likely to happen in the current definition of the way the facility is. If you were to open up 25 apartment beds with a fountain in the middle and room service, are there people in this community that would pay the price you need to make the margin up that the government insurance doesn't pay?
The mix of residents here, there's more private pay than I thought there would be, as far as a percentage.
Percentage, but no
percentage. And the Missouri Medicaid reimbursement has been woefully lacking for several years. We have had to do room rate increases over the last 3 years. The room rate increased $16 per day for a private paying resident. Missouri Medicaid in that same time frame went up $2.03 per day. Okay. The state of Missouri, in about November or December, they made a retroactive payment. They did a 1-year increase to hold facilities over until June of 2022. And in that notice, they stated that they were working on a new reimbursement system, one that looked at each facility's cost report. There are different cost centers that they divide, and they look at what your expenses are. And they used to do that up until about 2004. And they would set each facility's reimbursement based on what it cost them to take care of patients through their cost report. They abandoned that many years ago and would occasionally do a flat rate increase, same amount every facility across the board, maybe $2, $3, $5. So they were saying we're going to go back and do a cost report rebase. And that in this new system that they would be looking at some incentives and looking at maybe an acuity level of care system to reimburse. Okay. So in my talking with different people recently, as yesterday, I talked with a gentleman who seems to have an inside track and is watching very closely what the state is proposing. And at this juncture, they just have plans that still they're working on. And this rebase that they're working on, he gave me a number of around $20 to $25 per day average that would increase come July 1, maybe. If that's where they are now. It's a long ways from being a reality. And they were having on the table that the Missouri Medicaid would then every 2 years repeat that cost-based analysis and increase based upon those cost report of each facility. But when I saw the letter back in November, whenever it was, I was very skeptical because I've seen that for years. They've talked about a rebase over and over again, but they haven't done it since 2004. So I don't know, that's probably a long ways from what they will end up doing, but I do know that some of those, I do know that's where they are today, in trying to figure out a plan to increase the Medicaid reimbursement.
But $25 a day would be huge. If that was, and is that only for Medicaid patients?
Yes.
And we're mainly private pay, or?
I did just some quick numbers, that would be about $15,000 a month difference of additional revenue.
So that's 20,000, 30,000
Yeah.
a month.
Tom brought it up about room rates in general, and I think one of the residents, I've talked to a family, one of the residents that looked at moving their resident to where they live, like where the children live, and it was gonna be 3 times higher than our room rate per month. So, and a monthly rate in the long-term care side is how much?
138.
138.
Per day. Times 30 days, about 3,900, almost 4,000. So other facilities to move to, 12,000. If you went to like the St. Louis area, if you went to the Kansas City area, you could run a nursing home and probably pay your nurses well enough to meet this staffing agency if we just, it costs $12,000 a month for people.
We're talking about $350 a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the difference we're talking about. I mean, we are priced where our community can afford.
Yes.
But right now, there's been things that have occurred as an inflation of staffing. And the reason why there aren't staffing even in these staffing agencies is because there's a nationwide nurse shortage. So everybody's, you know, going around working all over the place.
Those are privately run, corporation-owned homes, right?
Right.
They're what?
Privately owned, corporation-run homes. And I thought Dr. Tolmer might fall out of his seat whenever you said you're getting your RNs for $75 an hour. What's
That was an LPN.
Oh, it's an LPN.
But even still.
So, but what's RN? We're staffing about 4 staffing nurses right now, and what's the range?
It keeps going up. The most recent that we can't fill is about $220
an hour.
And there's no one available at that price, so we'll have to go higher to get someone potentially.
How much?
$220 an
an hour for agency nurse.
Get you RN, Rick.
We have one currently, I think, at 180, but that was that was from, 3 months ago.
$220.
Yes, sir. This is not sustainable.
Right.
Well, I understand
The
that.
care center is a canary, and rural health care is coal mining. I'm just telling you.
A while ago, Tim said, he thought 50, we could probably be at a sustainable level, 50 residents, and if we're at 37, okay, that's an increase of 13, that sounds like, yeah, we can find 13 people. Well, you do that on a percentage basis, that's 35% increase of census, and
But you can't even take them without 4 nurses.
that's a big bump.
I mean, 2 full-time nurses, 2 part-time nurses, isn't that what you said?
That's to take care of what we have.
Yeah.
So if you add another 13, you're gonna have to have more
Yeah.
nurse aides, et cetera, than what we're.
Well, I appreciate the board allowing more than just 30 minutes advertised.
We appreciate you coming and
Do you feel like that's what happens short lived?
But once you kill off the percentage and you burn out, you've got 60% of the workforce left. Everybody still needs the same number.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a discussion with Scott County Hospital Board.
I was for the government mandate, but now I can see that might be necessary for some places stay open.
That's, you're gonna go through that. That's why the numbers about the kitchen.
Right, I understand that. Well, but I mean, that's where you need to put the focus on.
The problem is, they're not gonna get that. They're gonna be less places open.
I guess people want to take a break, don't have to.
Okay, now we're on.
Take a break, kid.
That's why I think that.
That's fine. I don't. Oh.
Here it is.
Excuse me. Excuse me, what? I don't want to trip you.
I need to go get something in my belly.
yeah, me too.
Huh?
No, now I'm gonna stick around and probably get home.
shaved off, or next time I go to a ball game, I'll ask you. I did last time.
Yeah, it doesn't work out for me. I wanna go to the Dyers.
Yeah, that'd be fun too. I thought they said, I was talking to the commissioner, I thought he said the county had around $100,000.
Well,
Maybe.
in the city, there's another thing, you know, you got something.
But I mean, $100,000 to go like that. What's the meeting now?
Care center meeting, I don't know about.
They invited the hospital board because there's a situation that there's a problem that the hospital is gonna have with the care center closing. It's not good for the hospital. We need to discuss that.
It's created in the care center for the hospitals. They're not gonna have a cafeteria or food.
That's the problem. That's the problem. So that's what they need to discuss. That's the reason they've invited the pretty good. Hold on a sec, let me just
You have to see what's inside it.
Oh, now you told him. I told you. There's 2 bottles of Fireball.
You did
hold on 1 second. Hi, I'm Echo Menges. If you're still watching this live stream, we have just wrapped up a nearly 2-hour public comment session about, with the members of the Scotland County community here to talk about give their comments on the coming closure of the Scotland County Care Center. This is an emergency meeting of the Scotland County Nursing Home District Board of Directors. There is some more to this meeting. There's going to be a bit of a lull before the business part of the meeting begins, and I'm not exactly sure what pieces of business are going to happen other than a discussion between the Board of Directors for the Scotland County Hospital and the Board of Directors for the Scotland County Nursing Home District. I am going to shut this live stream down for now just because there's going to be kind of a long blank of nothing, and I'm trying to do things like conserve power in some of my equipment. So when the meeting reconvenes, I will go back live again so everyone can see what happens during the business portion of this meeting. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to sign off for now, and then back on the Nemo News Facebook page, I will stand up another live stream that will be the second part of this meeting.